The cold, dark sky loomed over Jack as he slowly came to his senses. His head ached, and his arms felt heavy. The last thing he remembered was a bright flash of light, followed by the feeling of being pulled through the air. Now, here he was, lying on the ground of a strange, alien world. Confusion flooded his mind as he tried to sit up. His surroundings were unlike anything he had ever seen before. Towering, jagged rocks rose high into the air, casting long shadows in the dim light. The ground beneath him was rough, covered in strange, glowing plants that seemed to pulse with life. The air smelled unfamiliar, thick with the scent of alien soil and distant smoke. He couldn't make sense of it. Where was he? How did he end up here? As Jack staggered to his feet, his heart raced. He felt an overwhelming sense of danger, as though something, or someone, was watching him. His instincts told him to move, to run, but there was nowhere to go. He was trapped on this alien world, surrounded by a landscape he couldn't begin to understand. Jack had been a soldier back on Earth, trained for all kinds of dangers. He had faced wars, threats, and countless battles. But this was different. The fear he felt was unlike anything he had ever experienced. He had been taken, possibly kidnapped, and now he was far from everything familiar. There were no friends to help him, no allies to turn to. He was alone. A rustling noise interrupted his thoughts, and Jack spun around, instinctively reaching for the weapon at his side. His fingers brushed against empty air. His gun, his equipment, everything was gone. He cursed under his breath. How could he be so careless? He had no choice but to rely on his skills. His mind needed to work faster, more effectively than ever before. A low growl broke through the silence. Jack's breath caught in his throat. He turned toward the sound, his eyes scanning the darkened landscape. At first, he saw nothing. Then, something moved, a large shadow darting across the rocks. It was fast, too fast. Before Jack could react, a massive figure emerged from the shadows. It was a creature, unlike anything he had ever seen. It had the body of a beast, sleek and muscular, with glowing eyes that gleamed with a fierce intelligence. Its teeth were sharp and jagged, like those of a predator. The creature growled again, stepping closer, its large paws crushing the ground beneath it. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. He knew one thing for sure. This was not an animal. This was no wild creature. It had purpose, and it was heading straight for him. He backed away slowly, trying to think of his next move. The creature didn't seem to be in a hurry. It took its time, as if savoring the moment. Jack kept his eyes on it, studying its movements, looking for any weaknesses. He had been in situations like this before. He had faced monsters, traps, and dangers far worse than this. But this alien world was different. The rules were different. The creature stopped a few meters away from him, its glowing eyes never leaving his face. It stared at him, as if trying to decide what to do next. Jack could feel the weight of its gaze on him, as though it was reading his every thought. His palms were sweating, and his mouth was dry. But he couldn't show fear. He couldn't let it see his weakness. Just when Jack thought the creature was about to strike, a voice echoed from the distance, cold and commanding. "Why aren't you scared, human?" The voice was deep, almost like a growl, but it had a strange quality to it, almost like it was being amplified. Jack stiffened, his eyes darting around, searching for the source of the voice. He couldn't see anyone, but he knew someone was out there, watching him. The creature growled again, taking a step forward, its claws scraping against the ground. Jack's muscles tensed, ready to spring into action. But he couldn't act blindly. He had to stay focused. The voice had come from somewhere. The voice and the creature. Everything was connected. "One word from me," the voice continued, "and my pet will tear you apart." Jack's mind raced. Who was this? Who was in control here? He looked at the creature, still standing motionless, its eyes locked on him. Was this creature the one the voice was speaking of? Was it trained? Or was it something worse? Jack slowly, cautiously, began to move. He had to get out of this situation. But he couldn't run. Not yet. He needed information. He needed to understand who or what he was dealing with. And most importantly, he needed to survive. With his heart still racing, Jack took a step forward, his eyes scanning for any sign of movement. He knew he couldn't trust the alien landscape. He couldn't trust the creature. And most of all, he couldn't trust the voice. Suddenly, the creature lunged. Jack didn't hesitate. He dropped to the ground, rolling to the side just in time to avoid the creature's sharp claws. It screeched in frustration, turning to face him again. This time, Jack was ready. He stayed low, using the environment to his advantage, ducking behind rocks and trees, staying out of the creature's line of sight. The voice, still distant but closer now, spoke again. Pathetic, it said, its tone dripping with disdain. You think you can escape. You think you can survive on my world. Jack's pulse raced, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. His mind was clear. There was only one way out of this. He had to fight, but the question was, could he defeat whatever this alien world had in store for him? The creature was circling now, its growls louder. Jack stayed hidden, waiting for the right moment. It wasn't just his life on the line. It was his only chance at escape. He couldn't let fear control him. The voice spoke again, colder this time. You are nothing but a toy, human, a pawn, and soon, you will be my pet's next meal. Jack's breath hitched. He had no idea who, or what, this alien was. But one thing was clear, this fight was only just beginning. Jack's heart pounded as the creature stalked the area, growling low. Its eyes glowed brightly in the dark, and every movement it made sent chills down his spine. He pressed his back against a rock, trying to steady his breathing. His escape wasn't going to be easy. This was no ordinary alien world. The creature wasn't just a wild animal. It was trained, controlled by someone far more powerful than Jack. The voice echoed again, more intense now. Why do you resist, human? You are nothing in my world. Jack clenched his fists, frustration bubbling up inside him. He wasn't going to give up without a fight, but the more he thought about it, the more he realized how little he knew about the situation he was in. He had been taken from Earth, far from home, and now he was surrounded by dangers he couldn't even begin to understand. He couldn't see the person controlling the creature, but their voice, cold, commanding, pierced through the air. It was as if they were watching him, every move, every breath, waiting for him to make a mistake. He forced himself to think. Think, Jack, think. What was his best move? He couldn't fight the creature head-on. It was too fast, too strong, and there was no telling how many more dangers this alien world had in store for him. Suddenly, the growls stopped. The creature stood still, its gaze fixed on rock Jack was hiding behind. Jack's heart skipped a beat. Did it know where he was? Then, to his surprise, the creature stepped back. It circled around the rock, moving slowly, almost as if it was testing him. It was like a game, but Jack wasn't sure he wanted to play. The voice spoke again, this time almost mocking. You're smarter than you look, human, but you'll have to be quicker than that to survive here. Jack narrowed his eyes. The person controlling the creature was playing with him. This wasn't just a test of survival. It was a game to them, and Jack was their target. He needed to find out who this voice belonged to, who was in control here. What were they after? Another growl snapped Jack from his thoughts. He was running out of time. The creature lunged, faster than before. This time, Jack was ready. He dashed to the side, narrowly avoiding the beast's sharp claws. His body slammed into a nearby tree, and he grunted in pain. But there was no time to rest. He had to keep moving. As Jack scrambled to his feet, he saw something that made his stomach twist with fear. The creature wasn't alone. Two more massive beasts emerged from the shadows, their eyes glowing like the first ones. They flanked him, trapping him in a circle. Jack's breath caught in his throat. How many were there? How many creatures were controlled by this voice? You're surrounded, human, the voice said, its tone dark and cold. You can't escape now. Jack's eyes darted between the beasts. There was no way out, no way to fight. He could feel the weight of his situation pressing down on him. But then, a spark of defiance lit in his chest. He wasn't just going to give up. He couldn't. Suddenly, the voice cut through the tension. Are you scared now, human? It taunted. Are you ready to submit? The creatures moved closer, their growls vibrating the air. Jack's mind raced. He needed a plan, and he needed it fast. The first beast lunged again, but this time, Jack was ready. He dove to the ground, rolling under the creature and narrowly escaping its snapping jaws. His heart raced, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. Every moment he wasted meant he was closer to becoming the creature's next meal. He glanced around for any advantage. There was nothing. The terrain was harsh, unforgiving, and the creatures were too fast. But then he saw something. A cliff to his right, high and steep. If he could make it there, maybe he could climb. Maybe he could escape. But the voice spoke once more, its words chilling him to the core. Go ahead. Run. But you'll find that in my world, there's no place to hide. The creatures moved closer again, their eyes locked on him. Jack's breath hitched in his throat. He had to act, and fast. His only chance was to make it to that cliff, to find some sort of advantage in the height. Jack sprinted, pushing his body to the limit. He could hear the creatures behind him, their growls getting louder, their claws scraping against the ground. He didn't dare look back. Just as he reached the base of the cliff, the first creature lunged at him again. Jack barely managed to scramble up, his fingers gripping the rough stone. He pulled himself up with all his strength, heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the creature's hot breath on his heels. With one final push, Jack reached the top. He gasped for air, his body trembling with exhaustion and fear. The creatures circled below, their growls echoing in the night. They couldn't climb. Not like this. Jack collapsed to the ground, trying to steady his breath. His heart was still racing, and his mind was spinning. He had made it, but only for now. The voice, that cold, mocking voice, echoed again from below. Smart move, human. But this is far from over. Jack's eyes narrowed as he glared down at the beasts. They were waiting, watching, but they couldn't reach him. For now, he was safe. But how long would that last? Suspense. Jack is now in a temporary safe spot, but the voice's mocking words remind him that his struggle is far from over. Will he be able to survive, or will the alien world consume him? Jack's heart pounded as he lay flat on the cliff, the wind biting at his skin. He could hear the creatures below, circling, growling, and waiting. They couldn't climb, but they weren't leaving, and neither was the voice. It felt as if it was always there, watching him from the shadows. The voice spoke again, chilling and emotionless. Nice try, human, but you can't hide forever. Eventually, you'll come down, and when you do, my beasts will feast. Jack gritted his teeth. This wasn't the time to panic. He had to think. But his mind was racing, spinning with all the questions he had. Who was this voice? What did they want with him? And why did they have these terrifying creatures? He needed answers, and he needed to stay alive. The moonlight above barely lit the alien landscape, but Jack's eyes were sharp. He couldn't stay on the cliff forever. He had no food, no water, and no weapons. The only thing he had was his wits, and right now, that was all he could rely on. He glanced down at the creatures below. Their glowing eyes were locked on him, their growls vibrating the ground beneath him. He could feel their hatred, their hunger, but he wasn't about to give them the satisfaction of seeing him scared. Jack took a deep breath and turned his gaze to the shadows around him. The voice had said there was no place to hide, but maybe there was a way to outsmart them. He wasn't just a weak human. He had faced danger before, but this was different. The creatures, the voice, everything about this alien world was unlike anything he had ever known. Suddenly, Jack heard a soft sound, a rustling in the bushes behind him. He whipped around, his heart racing. His mind told him to stay still, to listen, but the instinct to move was stronger. Could it be another threat, or was it an opportunity? Before he could react, a figure stepped out from the darkness. It wasn't a creature. It was another human. The person was tall, wearing armor that looked like it had seen better days. Their face was hidden behind a mask, but the stance was unmistakable. They were a fighter. "Who are you?" Jack whispered urgently. He didn't trust anyone in this place, but he couldn't afford to be alone anymore. The person didn't answer immediately. Instead, they crouched down beside Jack, their eyes scanning the area. "You're not from here, are you?" The person finally said, their voice low and calm. Jack shook his head. "No, I'm not. Who are you? What's going on here?" The stranger hesitated, then pulled a small device from their belt and activated it. The device emitted a faint glow, showing a map of the area. "I'm a survivor," they said, their voice still cold. "I've been stuck here longer than I care to admit. These beasts," they pointed to the creatures below, "are part of an experiment. A twisted one. And the voice you're hearing, it controls everything here." Jack's eyes widened. This was an experiment. The creatures were part of some sick test? He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "What'd they want?" Jack asked, his voice shaky. "Why me?" The stranger looked away for a moment, their face hardening. They want to break you. This world, this place, it's meant to test those who come here. They want to see if humans can survive. But the truth is, no one has ever escaped. Jack's stomach twisted at the thought. Then how do we get out? How do we survive? The stranger gave a small, grim smile. Surviving is the easy part. The hard part is getting off this planet. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. How do we do that? Before the stranger could respond, the voice boomed again. Louder this time, filling the entire landscape. Do you think you can run? Do you think you can hide? The voice taunted. I see you, and I see your new friend, human. I see all. You will not escape. This world is my domain, and you will play my game until the end. Jack's heart sank. The voice knew they were there, and the creatures below were starting to move again, their growls growing louder. Jack could feel the tension in the air, like a storm ready to break. We have to move, the stranger said urgently, grabbing Jack's arm. This is our chance. Follow me. Without waiting for a response, the stranger sprinted toward the edge of the cliff. Jack hesitated for a moment but followed, knowing there was no other choice. As they moved, the creatures below began to growl louder, their eyes shifting in their direction. Jack felt the pressure building. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shook. A massive explosion of dirt and rock erupted from the distance, and the ground trembled violently. It was as if the entire world was shifting, breaking apart. Get down, the stranger yelled, pulling Jack into a nearby trench. The two of them dove into the narrow space, just as the shockwave passed. Jack's body slammed into the hard ground, pain shooting through him. But he didn't care. He had survived. For now. As the dust settled, Jack's mind raced. The world was coming apart around him, and the creatures, along with the voice, were growing more dangerous by the second. But he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to be part of their game. He would find a way out. He had to. Suspense. As the voice's control tightens and Jack gets closer to understanding the terrifying reality of the world he's trapped in, he's given a new ally. Someone who knows more about the game. But is it too late for either of them to escape? Jack's heart was still racing. The explosion that had shaken the ground felt like a warning, a promise of worse things to come. The stranger who had saved him was now crouching beside him, scanning the horizon with intense focus. Jack tried to catch his breath, his mind reeling. This world, this nightmare, he didn't know how much more he could take. The stranger's voice cut through the silence, low and urgent. Stay close. We can't afford to get separated. Their eyes darted back and forth, always alert. The creatures are getting smarter. They're learning. And the voice, it's not just controlling the beasts. It controls everything. Even the ground you walk on. Jack nodded, his mind still trying to grasp the magnitude of what was happening. So what do we do now? How do we get out of here? The stranger didn't answer immediately. Instead, they activated the device again, the map glowing faintly in the dark. We need to find this central hub. It's where the voice's power comes from. If we can destroy it, we might have a chance to escape. Jack's eyes widened. Destroy it? How? We don't even know where it is. The stranger gave a grim smile. I've been tracking it for months. I know where it is. But getting there is going to be the hardest part. Jack didn't have time to think about the plan. The ground beneath them rumbled again, and this time, the creatures were closer. He could hear them moving through the thick brush, their growls growing louder. His blood ran cold. The voice was watching them, and it was getting closer. Move, the stranger hissed, grabbing Jack's arm and pulling him to his feet. Now. Without waiting for Jack to react, they sprinted through the dense alien foliage, their feet pounding against the ground. Jack struggled to keep up, the weight of his fear dragging him down. Every time he glanced over his shoulder, he half expected to see the glowing eyes of the beasts closing in. But he couldn't let himself be distracted. He had to focus. As they ran, Jack noticed something strange. The air around them felt different. It wasn't just the heat or the smell of the alien plants. It was like the world itself was changing. The sky seemed darker, the stars barely visible behind the clouds that had gathered in the distance. The ground beneath them wasn't as solid as it should have been. It felt soft, almost as if it were shifting beneath their feet. Do you feel that? Jack gasped, struggling to keep up with the stranger. The stranger glanced at him, their expression unreadable. It's the voice. It's manipulating the terrain. We need to move faster. But just as they rounded a corner, Jack heard a sound, a low guttural growl. He spun around, his heart sinking. From the shadows of the trees, a massive creature emerged. Its body was covered in thick dark scales, and its eyes glowed with a malevolent red hue. The beast was almost twice the size of any they had seen before, its claws scraping against the ground as it stalked toward them. "Get down!" the stranger shouted, pulling Jack to the ground just as the beast lunged at them. The creature's jaws snapped shut just inches from Jack's face. He could feel the heat of its breath, the stench of blood and decay. His pulse raced, his mind screaming for him to move, to run, but there was nowhere to go. The creature had them cornered. For a moment, everything went silent. The only sound was the soft rustle of the leaves in the wind. Jack's mind was a blur, trying to process the situation. How could they survive this? The stranger's eyes met his, and Jack could see the fear there. Fear not of the creature, but of something much worse. The voice. "Why are you running, human?" The voice boomed, its cold tone echoing through the forest. "Do you think you can hide from me? Do you think you can escape?" Jack's blood ran cold. The voice was everywhere. It could see them. It was in control of everything. The stranger didn't hesitate. They rolled to their feet in one fluid motion, drawing a sleek metallic weapon from their side. With a single fluid motion, they fired. A bolt of energy shot from the weapon, striking the creature square in the chest. The beast let out a deafening roar as it staggered back, smoke rising from its chest. But it didn't fall. It wasn't done yet. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. Is that going to stop it? The stranger didn't answer. Instead, they fired again, this time hitting the creature in its head. The beast let out a final, horrific scream before collapsing to the ground, twitching and still. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, the voice echoed once more. "You think you've won. You think you're safe. This is just the beginning. I control everything, and you will never escape." The ground rumbled again, and Jack's stomach twisted in fear. He didn't know how much more he could take. The voice wasn't just a threat. It was a force, something beyond anything he had ever imagined. And as he looked at the stranger, he realized that they were in the same boat. The voice was playing a game with them, and they had no idea how to win. "We need to move," the stranger said, their voice strained. "If we're going to have a chance at taking down the voice, we have to keep moving." Jack nodded, his mind racing. The path ahead wasn't clear, but one thing was certain: there was no turning back. Not now. They had to keep fighting. They had to survive. Suspense. As the creature falls and the voice taunts them from the shadows, Jack and the stranger know they're just getting started. The voice is everywhere, controlling everything. And with each passing moment, the odds of survival seem slimmer. The silence after the battle with the creature was almost deafening. The only sound left was the distant hum of the strange, alien winds that blew through the trees. Jack's breath was heavy, his heart pounding, but the adrenaline was starting to wear off, leaving him with an overwhelming sense of exhaustion. He looked at the stranger, who seemed equally drained, but their eyes were sharp, focused. "We need to keep moving," the stranger said, their voice low but firm. "The creatures are getting more aggressive, and the voice, it's only going to keep coming for us." Jack nodded, but his mind was spinning. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the eyes of the voice were on them, even if they couldn't see them. It was a kind of paranoia that gnawed at him, an unsettling sensation that everything around them was alive, controlled by something far more powerful than anything he could imagine. The stranger led the way through the dense forest, their footsteps swift and sure. Jack followed, trying to keep pace. The path was rough, with rocks and alien plant life that seemed to move when they weren't looking. But there was no time to stop, no time to rest. They had a mission: find the central hub and destroy the voice. "We're close," the stranger murmured, not looking back. "I can feel it." Jack wanted to believe them, but doubt gnawed at him. How could they possibly find the heart of the voice in this massive alien world? How could they defeat something that controlled everything, that could manipulate the land itself? The thought was overwhelming, but there was no time for fear, not now. He had to trust the stranger. They were the only one who seemed to know what was happening, the only one who had been surviving in this nightmare for as long as he had. They walked for what felt like hours, the landscape growing darker and more alien with every step. The trees twisted into shapes that defied logic, and the air was thick, with a strange mist that made it hard to breathe. Jack's mind was clouded with the weight of everything that had happened. He wanted to ask the stranger more questions, to understand how they knew all this, but there was no time for conversation. They had to keep moving. And then, just as Jack thought he couldn't go any further, they came to a clearing. The trees parted, revealing a massive structure that loomed in the distance. It was unlike anything Jack had ever seen. A towering monolith of dark, metallic material, its surface smooth and gleaming under the light of the strange moons above. There was something eerie about it, a sense of foreboding that sent chills down his spine. "That's it," the stranger said, pointing toward the monolith. The heart of the voice. The central hub. Jack swallowed hard. It seemed almost too simple, too easy. They had come so far, fought so many battles, and now it was just here, waiting for them. But before he could voice his concerns, a sound broke the silence. It was faint at first, but growing louder. The unmistakable growl of the creatures, getting closer. Jack's pulse quickened. They were running out of time. "We need to go, now," the stranger ordered, grabbing Jack's arm and pulling him toward the structure. They ran, their feet pounding the soft ground as the growls behind them grew louder, closer. Jack could feel the heat of the creatures on their tail, and every step felt like it might be their last. The monolith seemed to get closer and closer, but the ground beneath their feet was beginning to shake again. The voice was angry now. It was watching them, following them, and it wasn't going to let them escape. They reached the base of the monolith, and the stranger quickly scanned the structure, looking for an entrance. Jack's heart was pounding in his chest, the fear choking him. But he forced himself to breathe. They had made it this far. They had to keep going. Finally, the stranger found something. An opening in the side of the monolith, just wide enough for them to slip through. They dove into the dark, the creature's growls just behind them, and the ground shaking beneath their feet. Inside, the air was thick and cold, a sharp contrast to the heat outside. The walls seemed to pulse with an eerie energy, and Jack's skin prickled. The stranger didn't hesitate. They pushed forward, deeper into the monolith's bowels. Jack followed, his every sense on high alert. The place felt wrong. The air was heavy with a strange energy, and Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, even in the darkness. They moved through winding corridors, the walls closing in around them. There were no windows, no light, only the faint hum of the structure's energy systems. The deeper they went, the more Jack felt like they were walking into the heart of a trap. "Stay close," the stranger warned, their voice barely a whisper. "We're almost there." Jack wanted to believe them, but his fear was building. What if this was a trap? What if they were walking straight into the mouth of the beast? The voice had controlled everything up until now. Could they really destroy it? Could they really stop it? But there was no turning back. Not now. They had come too far. And then, as they rounded a corner, they stopped dead in their tracks. In front of them was a massive, glowing chamber, the walls lined with strange, pulsating lights. At the center of the room, a massive orb floated in the air, its surface rippling with energy. It was the source, the heart of the voice. "This is it," the stranger said, their voice low and tense. "We destroy this, and we destroy the voice." Jack took a deep breath, his heart in his throat. This was it, the final step. But even as they prepared to move forward, the voice echoed through the chamber. "You think you can defeat me? You think you can destroy me? You are nothing but insects. Insignificant, weak. I control everything." The walls seemed to shake with the force of the voice's words, and Jack's blood ran cold. There was no going back now. The final battle was about to begin. The room was alive with energy. The walls thrummed with an unnatural hum, and the orb at the center of the chamber glowed brighter with every passing second. Jack's eyes were fixed on it, his body tense. He could feel the power emanating from it, as if it were a living thing. Breathing, watching, waiting. The voice's words echoed in his mind, growing louder with each heartbeat. "You are nothing. You cannot defeat me. I control everything. You cannot escape." It was almost as if the voice was inside his head, a constant reminder that he was just a tiny speck in the grand scheme of things. But Jack wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. The stranger, too, was resolute, their face grim with determination. They had come too far to turn back now. This was it, the final showdown, and Jack was ready to face whatever came next. "We need to destroy the orb," the stranger said, their voice steady but urgent. That's the heart of the voice. If we take it out, the voice will be silenced. But we need to act fast. It won't let us do this without a fight. Jack nodded, gripping the weapon he had scavenged from the creatures earlier. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. The stranger was already moving, their eyes scanning the room for any way to disable the orb. The energy in the room felt oppressive, like it was trying to push them back, to stop them from reaching their goal. And then, the voice spoke again, this time with a mocking laugh. You think you can defeat me with that? You are fools. I see everything. I control everything. You are nothing. The air around them seemed to shift, becoming heavier or colder. The ground trembled as if the very structure was fighting back against them. The orb's glow intensified, casting strange, eerie shadows across the chamber. Jack's heart raced, but he didn't falter. He couldn't. We have to break it, Jack said, his voice tight with determination. The stranger gave him a sharp nod. Stay close. Don't let it distract you. They moved toward the orb, but the moment they took a step forward, the ground beneath them cracked. A monstrous roar filled the room, and out of the shadows, the creatures appeared. More of them, larger and more vicious than before. They had been summoned by the voice, drawn to protect its heart at all costs. The creatures charged, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light, their claws bared, ready to strike. Jack barely had time to react before one of them lunged at him, its massive jaws snapping shut just inches from his face. He jumped back, barely dodging the attack, his pulse hammering in his chest. Get to the orb, the stranger shouted, already drawing their weapon and taking on the nearest creature. The sound of combat filled the air, a chaotic mix of roars, clashes, and the smell of burning flesh. Jack didn't hesitate. He ran for the orb, his legs pumping as fast as they could, weaving through the chaos. He could hear the creatures closing in behind him, their growls sending shivers down his spine. But he couldn't stop. He had to reach the orb. As he got closer, the room seemed to grow colder, the air thick with static. Jack could feel the pressure building around him, as if the very atmosphere was trying to crush him. The voice was growing louder, more furious. You are weak. You will fail. No one can defeat me. Jack ignored the voice, focusing on the orb. He could see its surface pulsing, rippling with power. It was as if the orb itself was alive, reacting to their presence. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a device the stranger had given him earlier. A small explosive device designed to disrupt the energy field around the orb. But just as Jack was about to activate it, the ground beneath him shook violently. He lost his balance, falling to his knees as the room seemed to implode around him. The creatures were closing in, their claws scraping against the floor, and the voice was booming in his head. No, you will never destroy me. The voice roared, its fury palpable. I am invincible. You cannot win. Jack could feel the anger and fear building inside him. He was so close to ending it all. He couldn't let the voice win. He couldn't let it control him any longer. With a growl of frustration, Jack slammed the device into the base of the orb and activated it. The device hummed to life, its lights flashing as it sent pulses of energy toward the orb. The voice's screams filled the chamber, a deafening cacophony of rage and terror. The orb flickered, its glow dimming, and for a moment it seemed like the entire room was holding its breath. Then, with a violent crack, the orb shattered, sending a shockwave of energy rippling through the chamber. The creatures howled in pain as the energy field collapsed around them, and the walls shook with the force of the explosion. Jack felt himself being thrown back, his body slamming into the ground. But there was no time to rest. The voice was gone. For the first time since they had entered this world, Jack felt a strange sense of silence. The oppressive weight of the voice, the sense that something was constantly watching him, had vanished. But the victory felt hollow. The room was in ruins, and the creatures were still there, slowly recovering from the blast. Jack knew they had won the battle, but the war was far from over. Let's get out of here, the stranger said, their voice grim but filled with relief. The fight's not over yet. Jack nodded, his body aching with exhaustion, but he knew they had to keep moving. The future of this world, perhaps even of many worlds, was still uncertain. But for now, they had won. And that was enough. The echo of the destroyed orb still lingered in the air, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Jack and the stranger stood amidst the ruins, the room eerily silent except for the faint hissing of the damaged walls and the heavy breathing of the creatures, who were slowly recovering from the shockwave. The world around them seemed to hold a strange sense of stillness. But Jack knew this calm was only temporary. That was just the beginning. Jack muttered to himself, his eyes scanning the room for any sign of movement. The victory they had achieved felt hollow. The fight against the voice was over. But the creatures were still here, and they were not the only danger lurking in this world. The stranger, still breathing heavily, wiped the sweat from their forehead. But there was something else in their eyes, something that Jack couldn't quite place. It was not fear. It was something darker, more unsettling. "What's wrong?" Jack asked, his voice barely a whisper. The stranger hesitated, their gaze shifting to the far corner of the room. There, partially hidden in the shadows, something moved. Jack's heart skipped a beat, and his instincts screamed at him to run, but his legs felt frozen in place. The stranger's expression hardened. "We need to leave. Now." Before Jack could ask why, the creature in the shadows stepped into the dim light. It was unlike anything they had seen before. Taller, more menacing, its body covered in scales that seemed to shimmer with a strange energy. Its eyes were glowing, red and full of malice. The creature's presence was suffocating, and Jack could feel the weight of its gaze pressing down on him. "This one, it's different," the stranger muttered under their breath. Jack's pulse quickened as he realized the danger they were in. This wasn't just another creature that could be taken down. No, this one was something far worse, a predator born of something darker, something more powerful. He could feel the air around them growing colder, the very essence of the ruse shifting, as if the creature was distorting reality itself. Without warning, the creature let out a bone-chilling growl. Its mouth opened wide, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth that gleamed in the dim light. It stepped forward, its long claws scraping against the floor as it advanced toward them. Its eyes locked on Jack and the stranger. Jack's heart raced. "What do we do?" The stranger didn't respond immediately. They were already moving, grabbing Jack by the arm and pulling him toward the exit. "We fight if we must, but we get out of here first. This creature is not something we can defeat easily." They sprinted through the wreckage, the sounds of the creature's heavy footsteps echoing behind them. Jack glanced over his shoulder to see it following, its massive form closing the gap with terrifying speed. His breath came in ragged gasps, but they kept running. There was no time to think, no time to plan. Survival was the only goal. As they reached the doorway, Jack felt a sudden pull at his chest, as if the room itself was trying to keep him in place. He stumbled, almost falling, but the stranger grabbed his arm, pulling him through the threshold. "Move!" the stranger shouted. They burst out into the open air, the cool breeze hitting Jack's face like a slap. The world outside felt almost normal in comparison, but Jack knew that the creature was still out there, following them, hunting them. The silence of the ruined world around them seemed almost too perfect, too still, but they couldn't stay in one place for long. "Where do we go now?" Jack asked, his voice tight with anxiety. The stranger looked around, scanning the landscape. "We need to find shelter. The creature is dangerous, but it's not the only threat. The balance has been disrupted. This world is changing, and we've only just begun to see what's lurking in the shadows." Jack's mind raced. The world they had entered had already been on the brink of chaos, but now, with the destruction of the orb, something else was awakening. The creatures, the voice, they were only a small part of something far bigger. "We can't stop now, can we?" Jack said, his voice filled with realization. The stranger shook their head, eyes grim. "No, we can't. The real battle is just beginning. We've disrupted something much larger than we anticipated, and the consequences are going to be far worse than we imagined." They began to move again, with the creature's growls echoing behind them. Jack didn't look back this time. He couldn't afford to. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to run, to keep moving, to find safety. But deep down, he knew there was no true safety anymore. Whatever was coming, whatever had been awakened by their actions, was far beyond anything they had encountered so far. The fight wasn't over. In fact, it was only just beginning, and they were about to find out just how deep the darkness ran.